This is Gateway City Sports.
It's a trap!
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
This is the Team of Rivals podcast.
Everything you want to hear from the big sports to the big screen.
He's all by himself, fires into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! No!
Vaughn into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
Doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
Time winding down, Michael for three. Yeah! Yes! She is gone!
I can't believe what I just saw.
Go crazy, folks! Go crazy! You believe in miracles? Yes!
You may fire when ready.
What?
Good evening, Cubs and Cardinals fans. It's Thursday, October 28th. It's the spooky season, and this is the Team of Rivals podcast, proud members of the Gateway City Sports Network, where you can find great podcast and blog content. You can follow us online at teamofrivalspodcast.com. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Team of Rivals Podcast, and we're on Twitter at Team of Rivals Pod. And for those of you watching us live, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and be sure to ring that bell on YouTube so that you receive notifications anytime we post new content. You know, I had a monologue ready to dig the knife in a little bit about how Mike Schilt still isn't employed, that Bob Melvin is going south, that the hated Dodgers have been bounced from the playoffs. And just as I was getting it all straight in my head, I didn't realize, but the thought crossed my mind. Why the hell do I introduce Elliott first? Ron's the co-founder of this podcast with me. He's number 48 in the 2020 edition of the Top Cards on Twitter. And yet for how many months have I been putting our permanent occasional guest host first? And here we go again, because in my opening monologue, I'm talking about Elliott. So joining me tonight, number 48 in the 2020 edition of the Top Cards on Twitter, and my co-host, Ron Nuttall, and the other guy. How you doing tonight, fellas?
Wow, Pete, that was spectacular. You know what? I was doing fine until I couldn't figure out how to share shit on Facebook once again. So whatever, man. I don't care.
No, Ron. It's meta. It's meta.
Right. Yeah, the mission's still the same.
Hell?
I don't know. That was kind of bizarre, but it's Mark Zuckerberg. Is it par for the course?
Dumber than New Coke.
I don't know. New Coke was an epic flop. I mean,
it was.
You know, that's a case study in college. I don't know that Zuckerberg renaming the whole parent company, Meta, is going to really.
So that's the thing that I didn't read into. Is he just renaming the holding company, and that Facebook is still going to be Facebook the same way that Google is still Google, but the company is Alphabet.
Yep.
Okay, then it doesn't mean anything.
It's a non-story.
Yeah, it's a non-story. Okay.
They're just trying to save face and change the narrative because of everything that's going on with them. So
they don't need to change the narrative. They just need to wait another day. Somebody's going to kill somebody.
Wow, that's dark.
Okay.
I mean, it's true, right?
You're not wrong.
Brian Laundrie killed Gabby Petito, and then either he killed himself or an alligator killed him, and then Alec Baldwin killed somebody. Give it another couple of days. Somebody else is going to die. Hell, it may be number 47 on the Top Cards on Twitter because Ron's looking to move up.
I'm going to fall down. I'm going to fall down this year. I've not been as active on the podcast front. I think that's one of the things that shot me up a little bit in the rankings when I was doing Ruffled Feathers with Jim, and then I was doing it solo for a while. But, you know, getting shared out on something like Their Reach, I think artificially shot me up, and I think I'm going to tumble. I might even fall into triple digits this year. I've been a little bit less active on Twitter. I fell out of love with baseball for a while there late in the season. And I don't know. I don't have high hopes, man. I'm like, my chances of the top cards on Twitter are about like my expectations were of the team starting the second half of the season. Like, let's just hope to stay alive and stay at least in the top 250 or 125, whatever it caps off at least just hope I follow the list. And that's all I can hope for.
So what you're saying is you're looking forward to a hot streak in the next week or so.
I think the voting's already happened. I think it's
at which point Sarah will summarily be dismissed.
Yeah.
Or you'll be dismissed.
Yeah, it might be. I'm working on it. So,
all right. So speaking of baseball, okay, yay, the Dodgers are gone.
Yeah, yep.
Yay.
And I didn't realize it until I was reading an article the other day. They may not be the Dodgers anymore because they're going to lose a lot of talent this year.
Oh man, hold on, time out. When you were going there, I thought, what about the Dodgers is offensive as a name? They're not gonna the Dodgers anymore? You had me for a second, man. I thought that's where you were going. I'm like, oh my god, like we can't.
I did too.
Elliott thought that we too.
Did I miss like an article?
I know.
Tweet from MLB. Like, what's the deal?
You know, between the NFL lawsuits and canceling all kinds of shit, man, Pete, you had me there for a second. I know you weren't trying to do that, but you had me. No, nobody's safe, man.
We're going to get canceled one of these days. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah. I'm surprised we haven't already.
I'm surprised we've lasted this long.
I know. I was thinking about just canceling us a couple years ago. And, Okay, so the Dodgers, yes, you're right.
I mean, if you look at all the losses and potential losses from that Dodgers roster, they may not be the juggernaut next year that they were, especially, and this isn't to take anything away from them, but with a real manager like Bob Melvin heading up the Padres, they may actually be a threat next year.
I would expect them to be. They were very competitive, obviously, in 2020, truncated season. We all know that, but I think they probably, made it to the next round of the playoffs. I think maybe perhaps they thought they would get close last year, but not make it that far. They fell back this year. And I think now that they've had a taste of success and what it's like to experience a collapse, I would expect them to be in the hunt and not have the wheels fall off in September like it did this year. So I expect a lot more from the Padres next year. It was clear that manager had message was just not landing on the players in the way that was probably intended. And so they needed to make that managerial change. We talked about this paradigm before, Pete, about all these first-time managers hitting the league, and there, quite a few of them it happened to. Part of it makes sense. You've got a player who's just a few years out of retirement, like you have one in your dugout right now, that can relate to the players. That if there's going to be a change, or if they want some kind of continuity. For some clubs, it makes sense to bring somebody in who knows the personnel, so the transition isn't so violently shifted in another direction. I mean, imagine going from Joe Madden to Tony La Russa very next year. That's an extreme change in, I think, approach and the way he runs his clubhouse. So I think bringing in Ross, bringing in Matheny when the Cardinals made that choice back in 2012, even to Mike Schilt, which is an internal guy. There's an importance to continuity. Now, it's got to be the right continuity, and I think the Padres will figure that out. They didn't have the right continuity in, was it Bryce Tingler? Was that his name?
Jace
Tingler. Jesus, I don't even, whatever. It ended in a CE. That's all I knew, and it had a Y somewhere in the middle of it. Can I buy a vowel? So, yeah, his message wasn't landing right. I think they're going to be they'll be improved next year. They've had a bad taste in their mouth in this year, but I expect them to be what we thought they were going to be this year. But I think they'll be that next year.
Speaking of young first-time managers, does that make you nervous that Oli is younger than some players in the majors right now? I'm not even referring to Cole Hamels.
First time in my lifetime I've ever been older than a Cardinals manager has been right now. And I know that's the way for a lot of fans that are close to my age.
If you run into him in the street, you're going to go up to him, poke him squarely in the chest and say, "Listen, son." Yeah.
that I can guarantee you, anybody that's spent even a month in a major league system or clubhouse knows more than I will ever know watching baseball for 4 or 5 decades. I mean, it's just, that's the way it is. I know we don't like to think that sometimes as fans. We're like, God damn it, we watched it in the screen. I watched it on the screen in my house, and I saw exactly what what that manager knew and what he saw. They know way more than us. They don't know what's going on. But with that said, I and a part of me was a little bit disappointed they didn't reach outside to maybe bring a new voice in. And that's the more we've gotten away from the decision to part ways with Schilt, and they tried to further explain a little bit at the beginning of the press conference when they introduced Oli Marmol. It's still bizarre when you think about how it transpired, and still, I don't think the reality's settled in that they just introduced a new manager for 2022 when just a month ago we were, word was kind of floating around that are they talking extension with Mike Schilt? Beyond next year. So it's just odd, but they kept it within the family, I guess, for the next seat. And I know I'll say this, I'll say it again. I know I've said it before. I'm like, this is it for Mozeliak, right? If he can't get this one right, I don't know how many more opportunities he's going to get. So every time I say this is it for him, if this move doesn't work or if he doesn't acquire the right players in the offseason, this is his last shot. I don't think John Mozeliak has a last shot. I think he has all the shots he wants. I just don't. After what has happened, it's really hard to say this guy should have been fired for these reasons. You can be upset with him for those reasons, but I don't think he's done anything so egregious right now that fans want to put. I mean, who are you going to put in there as president of baseball operations? Who do you want as a general manager? Do you want Billy Beane? Does that name sound sexy enough for you? Guess what? He hasn't won anything. Okay, he's won a few AL West titles, and that's about it. And if you want your team built up and then sold off every 3 or 4 years, that's a GM you want. Okay, it's not the one I want, but I don't know. It's kind of strange, man. We don't know if we want the one we're with, or if we want a name from outside. And it's the same way for I guess the clubhouse skipper. I don't know. I'm not upset or happy about this promotion. I'm just kind of indifferent.
We're going to come back to Billy Beane because I have a question for you. But before we get there, Elliott, what excites you most about the Cardinals' new manager? Is it that he's 35 years old, that his name is Oli, that he's a first-time manager, or that his name is Marmol, and so that you can count on him being wild after a year or two of success? Where are you going to land?
Everything. Because that means
what? Does that
coach
even
is
mean?
that young. Sorry. No, so his age and inexperience is probably going to be the one thing that'll play. You kind of see it now with some of. They're either hit or miss. I feel like there's no in between with these guys, where his lack of experience could just be a detriment. And the fact that he may be younger than some of his players and them maybe not feeling like, oh my God, I got to listen to this guy. It could be a clubhouse thing. You don't know. So,
well, I think for some of the veterans, Elliott, I kind of agree in the regards to, if we bring veterans in from the outside, like let's just say a Nolan Arenado who's not familiar with him. I could see a case where you might run into that where you never played at this level. You don't, there's that kind of, that respect level, I guess you think they don't have, but he's known a lot of their younger players. He was in the minor league system. He's been the bench coach for the last 3 years since Schilt took over. So the guys in the dugout that have been there, and especially a lot of the younger guys, they know him. And so I don't know, because we won't know until we know.
And I feel like the same thing with like the first thing that comes to mind is the Blackhawks and Jeremy Colleton. Like he was on the bench for a lot of years and he knows a lot of these guys, but it's not transitioning over to being a head coach.
No, that's not working out well at all.
No.
Well, you know what? Look at Barry Bonds. One of the best hitters of our generation that we got to witness play, with or without syringes. I really don't care, or creams. But I don't know how effective of a hitting coach he was when he was with Miami for a single year. Evidently, not a very good one.
Well, if you're a dick to everybody, then no one's really going to like you.
I don't know if he was. Barry Bonds, the player, was a dick in front of the camera and to the media, and perhaps to a fan or two in the stands. Was he like that with younger players? Look, as much
probably.
I don't know. I find that hard to believe because as much money as he's made in his career, like he didn't need a job as a hitting coach. That's he's certainly not doing it to continue making a living. Like he didn't need to. So I can't imagine that he went in there deflated and physically. I mean, he was deflated when he was a coach. He did not resemble who he was in his last playing years. So I don't know. You'd have to talk to a player that played that year.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But I guess my point is, good players, right, don't always translate to good teachers, good coaches. So
and you wonder if it's not because it comes too easy for them.
Yeah.
You know? And they don't understand why guys can't make that adjustment, and they don't know how to teach the adjustment.
Just hit the ball. Come on, just hit the ball.
Yeah. Well, I talked to a couple of years ago.
Stop swinging at that pitch. Sorry, Barry, I don't have your eye.
Well, speaking of that, it reminds me I was talking to Stan Musial's grandson, Brian Schwarzy, and he talked about how his grandpa said, well, you know, can't you see the seams on the ball to tell if it's a curveball or not? And he's like, no, I can't see the seams on the ball like you can. And so that's just the difference. And you're right. I think it's a good point. Some of the things just kind of come natural to some people, and it's hard for them to explain it and articulate it. If you don't have that talent, if you're not born with it, it's difficult to explain. You know, I remember coaches at certain points in time telling me to wait until the curveball flattens out. And it took me a couple years, like, what the hell are they talking about? What do you mean wait for it to flatten out? I remember trying to learn how to stretch when I was about 11 years old on a mound, and they kept saying straddle the rubber. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, you know, I almost need a physical example of what you're talking about. And that was the same with like pitch grips. Guys that explain it and they know how to do it, but I almost have to see like them take the ball off their fingers, roll off their fingers in slow motion so I get it. And I just learned that way. And I imagine that every player is a little bit different. And some guys are effective at communicating and articulating those things. And I bet others do struggle with it. So, like, you idiot, what do you mean you can't see the seams?
Yep.
They're red. They're red for a reason on the ball. What do you mean you can't see them? Because it was moving 102 miles an hour, maybe.
Speaking about second, third, multiple chances, who runs out of chances first, Ryan Pace or John Mozeliak?
You'd have to say Ryan Pace. He's got a shorter tenure. I mean, he's had a lot of leash, man. I don't know. Would you say any of his miscalculations been devastating? Maybe. But I mean, Trubisky could have been. You know, Trubisky was a setback, right? Rolling the dice.
Huge.
On him.
Well, I think that the bigger miscalculations they're under the radar, and I think people aren't going to notice them until he's gone. And that's been the way that he has mortgaged the future for the present, right? So he keeps renegotiating contracts in order to create cap space. And what's going to end up happening is the Bears are going to be in the exact same position when he gets fired at the end of this year that they were when he got hired. They're going to be old. They're going to be right up against the cap, and they're going to have no flexibility. And so they're going to be bad. They're going to be a bad team with a talented quarterback on a rookie contract, and they're not going to be able to do with him. And Justin Fields is going to leave because he's going to get tired of losing. Yeah,
I mean, it's just the same story every year, isn't it? Like, I want the Bears to be decent in such a bad way, especially during the winter when we don't have baseball active.
Yeah.
And I just want them to be halfway decent. So I'm willing to spend a few $100 on an NFL Sunday ticket. And I can't do it. It's not even a lot of money these days, but it's just like, why would I do it? I'm probably only going to watch one out of market game because I'm going to get upset like I did last week when they played the Buccaneers, which it almost looks, guys, like they had no business playing a team of that caliber.
No, absolutely not.
They were out of it right away. I think I tweeted this the other day. I know it was only Tuesday this week, Tuesday night. Nobody was playing. I already felt the Bears were down by 2 scores. I don't know who they're playing. I mean, it's like
San Francisco, and they may have a chance.
Well, no. I mean, maybe we should just put that on a Twitter poll question for us, Elliott. Are the Bears always down by 2 scores, even in July? And I feel like they are. It's like the Orioles. The Orioles are always down by 3.
Well, is Matt Nagy calling the plays or not?
I don't know, man. I don't know who's calling the shots over there.
I don't think he's calling the plays this week. There's been no indication that he's gotten over the vid yet. So
yeah.
Speaking of that, side
2
note,
negatives.
I got the booster and the flu in the same day, and for some people, that might not the best thing to do. I usually don't have a reaction to the flu shot, but I think getting them both
probably not your smartest move.
Yeah,
my wife and I both did the same thing on the same day, so we both had sore. I mean, and rarely do I feel the soreness from a flu shot, but Jesus Christ, this year we must all be compromised or something, or I'm just getting old. But both shoulders are pretty damn sore. That was my.
Well, I would imagine that our immune systems probably are a little bit weaker than they were 2 years ago because we just haven't been exposed to stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you've been living locked in your home largely. You're not getting exposed to the same kind of contagions that we normally are. And also, we're all behind masks. So seriously, think about it. When was the last time you were sick?
Oh, with anything, really? I mean, I get sinus reactions to humidity changes. I've always had that.
Right. But I mean, when was the last time like you were sick? You had a cold or you got the flu or something, and like you were down?
I don't know. I do know that the kids have picked up, a common cold at the school a few times. So if anything, the kids are probably better off than the adults.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree.
Anyway.
All right, so just a real quick note. Ron, you denigrate Billy Beane, but remember the constraints that he's playing in.
Oh, yeah.
He's been able to be competitive in, I think it's either the smallest or the second smallest market in Major League Baseball. Yes, he has to tear down every couple of years, but he's been competitive every year. Imagine, theoretically, obviously, we probably will never know. Imagine what that guy could do if he actually had resources available to him.
He had them available to him at one point. He turned down the job in Boston.
Right.
But
I think part of that was he wanted a percentage of ownership, and they wouldn't give it to him.
They didn't put that in the movie.
Of course they didn't.
Yeah, good point. Like if he was in a mid-sized market where he didn't have to do that out of necessity. What could he do with resources available now?
If he was in St. Louis, forget it. The Cubs are playing for the wild card every year. With him having that extra draft pick, he would play the CBA and everything like a Stradivarius. You guys would be in such good shape.
You know what? I'd rather have Billy Beane's one choice. I'd rather have the entire front office of the Rays.
Hell yes.
Oh, God,
what
yes.
they've been able to do is nothing short of just spectacular. And I know they fell short this year, and they did last year. But gosh, what they've been able to do as far as their minor league system that never seems to be short of talent that's on its way up. If I had my pick, I would just swap out front offices.
Oh, hell yes.
In a heartbeat. I think most of us would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's tough watching the minor league system just constantly be in the bottom 10 of the league. I mean, they've gotten better now, but it's been tough. And we've ad nauseum talked about the way the pitching's come up. So,
all right. So fast forwarding, because we're there. The Astros and the Braves split in the first two games. So advantage Braves.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to be the last pitcher to get an at bat in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, it's going to happen over this next three games, right?
You got to think that on Sunday, probably Urquidy or Fried.
It's going to be a starter, obviously.
Yeah, it's going to be exactly. So and the way it looks like it's lining up, it's probably Urquidy or Fried. I mean, one of those two is probably the last pitcher although somebody's going to do something, right?
It could be an Astros pitcher.
Well, that's why I said Urquidy.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
He's their starter.
It's kind of a cool little fact I guess it's a cool little thing that'll play out over the weekend. We will all witness the last pitcher to bat. But there's going to be a point in time, and there always is. It would probably happen once every couple of years where a pitcher will end up batting even with the DH for whatever freakish reasons. Like Wainwright will come in and they'll have him bunt. That's where I can see pitchers at some point in time, a pitcher will bat again. So this will not be the last time, but this will be the last time that the pitcher being required to hit. Yes, this is probably the last time we'll see it. You're going to see a pitcher come in to bunt at some point. And especially some of these National League pitchers that are a little bit more used to doing it. And look what happens in some of these tight games. In these games where races get tight, instead of bringing in a bench bat to lay down a bunt or something, they go to pitchers that Cardinals did it in 2011 when they won the World Series. They brought in Kyle Loesch when they had bench players available.
How long will that last?
It could phase out.
It's not going to be too long before the pitchers no longer have that experience, right? Those Wainwrights and Lesters and Arrietas. I mean, Arrieta's career is done anyway, but those guys who can handle the bat, they're going to retire and they're going to be gone. And all these young guys are never going to have had the opportunity. Pretty soon,
well, and
it's going to go the way.
How much longer is bunting a thing? Because the young generation thinks it's icky and stupid, and why would you ever give away an out? But there's going to be a couple managers that are going to still hang around, and they're going to have one or two pitchers work on that all year long. And instead of burning a bench bat or burning, and now look, it'll be maybe a little bit less of a concern burning bench players since you don't have to use them to pinch hit anymore. So perhaps you don't run into that, but there might be a time where it's necessary. Like, I want my best bunter, and you might say like, pitcher wanted to do a couple bullpen guys that's what they do. That's what they're brought in for, rather than teach your bench guys how to do it. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever. It's an interesting little, I guess, event the last time. But we're going to see a pitcher with a bat in their hands again at some point. It'll be weird. It'll be even more weird though. And I don't even know if they have helmets that are well, the pitchers just no longer have helmets anymore. Do they have to borrow somebody's? Do they even fit? So I don't know. I guess a fun fact, but I'm actually. It's okay. I'm okay with the DH. Bring it on. It was going to happen sooner or later. So its official ending is, we're watching the end happen right now, which is, I'm fine with it. Like, the National League is the Alamo in terms of pitchers being required to hit. Every other league, division, any other organized baseball in the United States has a freaking DH in place now. And the National League at the major league levels, like, the last.
I'm with you. I don't mind the DH coming in, but I do wish that they'd introduce something, right? So that there's a little bit of a throwback there to the NL. I mean, we had talked about it months ago, the possibility of you have your DH until the starter comes out. And then at that point, then he's no longer a DH and you got to decide what you're going to do.
Yep.
At that point, then your relief pitchers have to bat, or you have to use a pitch hitter. Just so that there's that little bit more strategy. And who knows, that might put a little bit more of a premium on your starting pitchers going longer, which I'm totally in favor of.
Yeah, I would like to see him do something to differentiate the two leagues a little bit more, because it's all those lines are so blurred already now. I know we've been around the game for a long time just watching it. We're used to this AL-NL dynamic, and the DH has been one of those virtual walls that's separated the two leagues.
How many years is it going to take before you have National League Week, where they have a week of ball games where the pitchers have to bat?
I don't know.
You just saw that hit.
Yeah. Both players are down.
I'm not watching it. Is it football?
Yeah, it was a kickoff, and the Packers brought it out of the end zone.
Stupid.
And I think the Cardinals guy probably has a concussion or maybe a broken collarbone, and clearly the Packers guy at the very least hyperextended his knee, if he didn't completely tear a couple of ligaments. He went straight down.
He did. His eyes were closed.
Yep.
I know we look back at football in the 70s, 80s, even before that, and we look at these giant men that were smoking cigarettes after the game and eating shit that they would never eat today, and
they were drinking beer and smoking cigarettes in the locker room after every game.
They were badass guys, but they are not the guys that we see playing this game today, where they turn their bodies into actual weapons, missiles, and just wrecking balls. And it's amazing that anybody makes it. I mean, somebody like just pick a player random like Ray Lewis, who made it out of this game relatively well, physically fit, sound. He probably could have played another couple of years, but I'm just wondering how many guys that just they're busted after their NFL career, and a lot of them are very short, right? Maybe 3 years, and they're done. What happened? I mean, I just imagine running into or getting run over by a truck, or just not paying attention, running into one of those concrete pillars like outside of a supermarket. I mean, that's got to be what it feels like to be hit by somebody.
The target ball.
Yeah, just running. Yeah, that's right. Just running a 40-yard dash, and you think it's invisible, but you just run into one of those goddamn target balls. That's probably what it feels like to be hit by an NFL player.
Yeah.
Well, think about just in the 30 plus years, so no, almost 40. Oh shit, guys, we're getting old.
Yeah, we are.
Since the Bears won the Super Bowl, right? And one of their starting guards and a Hall of Famer, Tom Thayer, When he played, he was 6'4", 261.
Yeah, freaking monster.
He wouldn't make the squad weighing 261 pounds.
No.
Maybe as your punter or your kicker. But other than that, he's never going to make the line weighing 261. If you're not over 300 pounds, forget it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're carting the Packers player off right now, and the guy from the Cardinals is still down.
Is anybody attending to him, or they just wait? They just wait in line. It's like in the emergency room.
It could very well be, man.
Yeah.
He might be unconscious.
I mean, they only came back for 15 seconds. They showed the Packers guy getting carted off, and then they cut back away.
God, I'll have to. I'm not going to turn this game on. I'll watch it. I'll watch replay and everything later. Speaking of football, while we're on it, so
yeah.
Another episode of this St. Louis versus the NFL versus the Rams lawsuit took an interesting turn over the last 24 hours, where an owners only meeting, or representatives of the owners, if they weren't going to make the trip, met somewhere in New York. And in that meeting, and I'm paraphrasing the entire thing, so I've listened to Conduct Detrimental podcast, which is pretty good. As those guys are sports lawyers, so they're sifting through all they're separating the tare from the wheat. I think that's a saying. In regards to this case, chaff. Yeah. So they're but anyway, long story short, it was revealed that Stan Kroenke may be looking to challenge the indemnification agreement that he signed with the rest of the league, stating that he would pay the bill for any damages if the league gets sued, or if the owners get sued by the city of St. Louis, he'd cover the bill, all the legal fees. And that was something that was agreed to prior to the relocation vote, that the owners give permission for Stan Kroenke to take his team to Los Angeles. It looks like he might be going back to renege on that deal, which a lot of the owners voted yes, because he was granting them indemnification. So he might be stepping back on that. A lot of the owners are pissed. So the line is starting to break up, and the owners in football will block a lot of things. They'll throw money at a lot of things to make them go away. And the St. Louis lawsuit is not going away. It's going to court on January 10th. In that meeting, Stan Kroenke was asked to leave the room while I think his name's Pash. He's an NFL executive. Informed the owners that Kroenke had was possibly challenging the indemnification agreement. So, which is the first step, of course, into backing out of it. And so the lines are starting to break up amongst these owners. There'll be some of them will fall out of line here pretty soon, and that's just more trouble for the NFL. John Mara, I think his name's John Mara, the owner of the Giants, called it ridiculous, and we never would have agreed. We never would have voted yes if it weren't for the indemnification agreement. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you a lot of those guys knew they probably didn't follow their own guidelines, and the St. Louis would potentially have a case against them, and they didn't want to be on the hook for the bill. So it's just one more thing it strengthens St. Louis's case. So this thing is very real. I know that national media Seth Wickersham finally wrote a column for ESPN, featured on ESPN, about this lawsuit. Finally, years later, I think we talked about it a couple shows ago. They're going to be forced to talk about this case at some point. They can't turn the blind eye to it anymore. It's out there. In podcasts like the one I was referencing, Dan Lust is one of the lawyers that's on there, and we had him on Gateway just a few weeks ago with Derek. They've really brought this to receive national attention. So it's getting it finally. There is real talk now about granting St. Louis an expansion team would save the NFL several hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps even $1 billion, by granting them an expansion rather than paying out a huge, basically a huge award or a huge judgment. So that might be a logical alternative to the NFL. You hear that they want to expand beyond 32 teams anyway. They'd need 34 ideally to make it work. So this might accelerate that. And more cities, more teams, more money for the NFL. It's probably a better move for them. So I think the possibility of St. Louis actually getting football back is very real at this point. And I think it really comes down to what St. Louis wants. Do they have the appetite to do any more business with the NFL, or is they going to say, no, thank you, we'll take our $1.5 billion and thanks, but no thanks, you keep your sport and stay the hell away from our city. You know, we'll let Kansas City represent Missouri as far as NFL goes.
No, that's not going to happen.
It was also revealed that from the NFL executive that Stan had attempted to Kroenke had attempted to settle, but obviously that read between the lines that wasn't enough for the city of St. Louis, and there wasn't an agreement reached, and they want to go to trial. Probably the right move for them, because the longer they do that, the higher the price gets for him. And so this is going to be really. I just wish I could fast forward to January now and just watch this unfold. I still have to believe that that's the last thing the NFL wants to have happen. That's an absolute last resort. I think they know that their chances are dwindling in front of a St. Louis jury in the city of St. Louis, in front of a judge in St. Louis. Their chances are I'd have to think that the NFL is leaking confidence, and that's not something that they're very good at. So interesting. The way this will unfold. There's no shortage of coverage or information out there these days. All you have to do is go to YouTube, Google it, whatever you're searching for, and you're going to find plenty of people talking about it these days. And the big news outlets, their hand has been forced, and they're going to have to start covering it.
Yeah.
And you hope that at some point Derek gets his due, because this could end up being a big break for him, and you'd love to see
He appeared on the Conduct Detrimental podcast with Randy Carricker of 101 ESPN, Tim McKernan of 590 The Fan. Those are St. Louis media. And I can't remember there was one more. Benjamin Albright was appeared on that too. So Derek did get a spot on the panel because he's been close to the story since, it's really 2015, if not earlier than that, when this started to the ball started rolling on the Rams trying to get out of the market. So, if you look back at it, if it just wouldn't have talked, if they wanted to leave St. Louis as a business owner, if you think you can do better in another market, more power to you. And I would say that to anybody who owns a business, you should be able to do that. But if you're not going to negotiate in good faith, he probably was better served by just coming out and say, I'm not going to negotiate in good faith. I'm not, or not that, but I'm not going to stay here. We do intend to move. I think if they would have just kept that line from the beginning, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this. But arrogance.
He didn't want to potentially be on the hook for any of the tax commitments, the dome, any of that stuff.
Right.
He just wanted to sneak. He was hoping that he could pull an Art Modell and sneak out in the dark.
Well, and the arrogance of these guys, even going back to when this vote happened, they probably never imagined in a million years that this would still be alive, 5 years later, and they'd be going to court. And so this is just a problem that's not going to go away for them. The proposed settlement, they stated in that meeting, was more than the net worth of some of those owners in that room. So we're talking a lot of money.
Jeez.
So
the Packers just lost another guy to a knee injury.
They have to start pulling guys from practice. Do they have a taxi squad like the baseball does?
I know they did last year.
Ooh, that did not look good.
I wish I could see it, but.
Oh man.
All right, so since I can talk while Elliott and Pete stare at the screen watching a sports game.
Sorry.
So hey, look, off season's coming soon, right? I know we're all on board for the Braves. For those of you who are not privy to our Team of Rivals chat, anytime that anything good happens for the Astros, know that probably about 30 seconds before that, Ron talked shit about them. So just know that.
Didn't happen last night though.
It played out. It played out with the Dodgers.
Or he talks good about the Braves.
Talks shit about the Dodgers. The worm would suddenly turn. So Elliott and I have done all that we can to keep Ron under control.
Yeah.
But sometimes he's just had too much to drink and he won't listen to us. So
the thing is,
this game isn't already.
I wasn't even doing that last night. And as soon as I got the notion to text something to you guys, they scored. And I'll hold off. And I don't know, man. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I should try the reverse psychology. I don't know.
I mean, you even waited to the eighth inning the other night, and then as soon as you said something, the Astros scored the next inning. He's like, yeah, maybe I should wait on this.
I know. I got to think of a better way to approach that. Got to keep our interest in wanting the Braves to keep the Astros. I mean, it's not even that we want the Braves to win. We just don't want the Astros to win, right? It doesn't matter who's playing them. So, we just gotta protect our interest. And speaking of staying protected, sometimes life throws you a curve, and that's why you need Allstate. The Wiley Group has 2 locations in Festus and Arnold to serve you. They offer home, auto, boat, motorcycle, business, life insurance, investments, and so much more. They offer a customized approach that is unique to your situation to make sure you, your family, and assets are properly protected. They offer great rates and savings. Give Sean and his team a call today at 636-764-6294. They'll help you with an insurance quote right over the phone. You can even give them a call if you want to talk sports. They'll do that too. We all have busy lives, so you can email Sean at seanwiley@allstate.com and talk to him about your coverage options. And remember, you're in good hands with Allstate.
You know, now would be the time of year that we would be starting to get excited about who our teams might be going after, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to be the big free agent? Who do we think? And honestly, guys, I can't even start to think about that. I can't get excited because all signs point to nothing happening. They've already announced that they're, I don't know, are they canceling, postponing the winter meetings? And that's all prelude probably to some kind of labor action. And either there being a lockout or there being a strike when the CBA expires. I mean, how are we supposed to get excited about the offseason when it certainly doesn't look like the offseason is going to happen?
Yeah, that's a bummer, right? Because December, strangely enough, is one of the more exciting months. You know, you have April, which is usually right around opening day. You have the playoffs in October. But December's right up there, I think, with all of them, and especially around those winter meetings where we get to sit there and watch Major League Baseball or MLB Network for an entire night, watch Twitter all day long just to see what's happening, and to have that taken. Well, I tell you what, man, you talk about. I know there's a billion reasons that's a pretty big fat onion, a lot of layers to it, and it's not as simple as what any of us think by statement. But if you think about the timing of them pulling this kind of shit right now, when the interest in the sport, and I can't wait to see the ratings coming out of the World Series, the ratings are going to get a little bit of a boost over what they go ahead.
Huge boost for game 1.
Yeah, it's because everybody wants to see the Astros get the shit kicked out of them. They've got extra bump in ratings because people hate the Astros so much. So go back to this, like at a year and a time when interest in the sport is waning, especially, and I'm not talking like we can talk ratings right now. We can talk even ticket sales, but if you look around in life, guys, how many people are talking about baseball? How many kids are collecting cards? I mean, it's just, I think it's a very dangerous time for them to go into strike mode right now. We had conflict in the middle of 2020. They were trying to just agree on when to start playing again. Owners didn't want to play as many games because they didn't want to pay half the salary. Players didn't help themselves either. They really probably ought to block them off Twitter. And now, like we had this year. So I think interrupting baseball again is going to be a huge mistake for them. Huge mistake for them.
And to your earlier point, Ron, ratings for game 1 were up 13% over last year. Now, granted, last year was terrible, but still they had over 10 million viewers for game 1. And
I mean,
yeah, I think so. And despite baseball's best efforts, there is special baseball being played in Atlanta this weekend. They did try to recall the Rockies to take the place of the Braves, but apparently they couldn't get enough of Colorado's players to come off their early vacations to take their place. So baseball is going to happen in Georgia this year. But also, we've talked about it and you said it there, Ron, every incentive for baseball not to screw this up. And yet, I don't know if it's Rob Manfred. I don't know if it's Tony Clark. I don't know if it's both of them.
It's not possible.
Baseball cannot do anything to get out of its own way.
Yeah, I mean it's especially bad, to do it now. Look, I can't point to any one person and say your fault, but Rob Manfred is the face of all this, right? When it comes to rule changes and all the other stuff he's tried to implement. And some of that, especially to people that have watched the sport for a really long time. We're not always the most friendly when you introduce change to the game, but I'd say some of those changes we've actually welcomed. The DH, I've been pretty anxious to just get it going. So it hasn't been all terrible, but yeah, there's no one person to point at here. It's just it's going to be a damn shame if 2022 is interrupted. 2021 wasn't normal, right? We had a lot of empty seats in a lot of stadiums that normally aren't empty. Nobody was at full capacity to start out. I look up, guys. Here's the telltale sign. I don't know how valid this is or not. I know the way people consume television and things have changed. But when I look up and I see American League Championship Series, National League Championship Series, and you can't find the damn things, and you go like TBS. Like TBS is so synonymous with
Huge
baseball.
mistake.
I mean, and then Fox Sports 1. I might be able to give that one a pass, but it's like, the National League Championship Series used to be on the goddamn networks, right? Just like football is, just like the big college games are. I mean, I know some of these got their own. I know ACC has their own network now, but it's something that should be on the national stage, and it's just not. I mean, it's just that's a sign for me that this sport is not as popular. I mean, it's a given. Sport is definitely not as popular as it used to be. Baseball is not doing a whole hell of a lot to help itself.
Do you think though that possibly the Players Association is thinking taking advantage of the COVID situation and the fact that these owners' pocketbooks have been hit pretty hard, that since they've been hit hard, this would be the best time to try and hit them again right after?
Well, I don't know.
To force them to come up with a better bargaining.
But that kind of adversarial approach is not going to benefit you, because if you're looking to bankrupt the owners, then you're killing.
No, just not bankrupt the owners, but use it for a part stoppage.
I mean, it's possible both sides could try to leverage that in some way, shape, or form. But I don't think that. Well, I think the union's gotten in its own way too. If they don't like the terms they're on now, they should have negotiated those shitty terms in the first place. So the union has
and that's true. It's partly their own fault.
Yeah.
And speaking of negotiating shitty terms, I don't know if you guys read this earlier this week, but apparently one of the leverage points that the Players Association is using is the status of the Rays next year and whether or not they're going to be a dual city team. Why you are including that in your negotiations for the season?
I don't.
Beyond me, that is such an that affects so few players.
Yeah,
that seems like something that you would. Why are you including that in this bigger picture? Because now you're going to have to give something away to get the concessions you want, and you're going to end up giving something away that to the owners is going to be far more valuable.
They proved that last time. They proved it last time, Pete.
Okay.
They thought they had some big wins, but they didn't. I mean, at the end of the day, they didn't. They still got players that their big payday payout is now pushed to 30, and we know that when players get to age 30, they're icky, and you can just replace them with a brand new player. If the owners could have it in their perfect way, it would be a lot like college sports, where by the time you got to pay guys, they're graduating and going somewhere else, and you got a fresh new batch coming up to replace them that you can pay the minimum. If they could have a perfect, and they might be willing to pay one or two veterans a big hefty contract to say that they spent some money to get some draw into the stadium with a name like Trout or somebody else. Like that probably will never go away. But if they could have it their way, those guys that are hit their 6-year mark, right, that once their clock stops, they don't want to pay them anymore. They're close to 30. They're almost dead. And so, we're going to move on from here. So, it's ugly. And I know the union wants the exact opposite. They want these guys to have a chance to earn a better payday earlier in their career. And I agree with that to an extent. But right now, I agree with you, Pete. Like, owners they did get hit in 2020. Make no mistake about it. They lost money. I don't know if any team would have made money in 2020. They didn't. Now, some of those guys can absorb it. It's probably not as big of a deal to some organizations. Others, it's pretty, I could see that it would disrupt somebody's plan for a couple of years, just having a year like 2020 that it happened. So now I think to push the owners more to pay guys earlier in their careers more money, potentially raising payroll up across your entire roster. Man, I just don't know that they have the appetite to do that, but the union is desperate to do that because they're bitten by it right now, right? And that you got service time manipulation, all the other stuff that's going on. Yep. I don't know. We were afraid this was going to be coming, and I think it's here. And I caught the same headline, Pete, that winter meetings were canceled. It might be a preemptive thing that there's a strike is likely to happen, and they all feel that, and so they're canceling events, or at least maybe it's another Zoom winter meetings instead of a physical winter meeting. So yeah, it's gonna suck, man. It's gonna suck having December taken away from us. If it does, it's gonna be that much harder. One, for us to do a baseball podcast, we'll have to fucking be talking about football and other things, probably even hockey. And that'll be
hell no, we're not talking about hockey.
I want to. The Blues are undefeated.
And Joel Quenneville just resigned.
Yeah.
Oh,
he did. Okay. So,
okay.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about other things which we're not great at. I mean, we know just enough to sound like we might know what we're talking about. If you start probing any of us on other sports, we will be exposed. We are a house of cards.
Hey, the Bulls are getting exciting.
Yeah, they had a chance at the buzzer to beat the Knicks tonight.
Oh, they ended up losing. Damn,
they did.
Oh well. Poor Bulls. I mean, the Bulls. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Tell you what, if there is a delay, right? If there is a strike, if there is a lockout, I just hope
they need
based
replacement
on our
players.
experience in
I want to see
2020,
replacement players this year.
I hope that I don't want replacement
players.
No,
I do, man. I do. I want to see it.
Why, you want to try out? But seriously, if they do, I hope that they learn. The one thing I hope is that they learn their lesson from 2020 and that they shorten the season, but they do not shorten training camp. There were too many guys who came in ineffective, who came in injured, or who got injured because they leave. It's clear. As much as we bitched about training camp being too long, it's not too long. It's how long it needs to be to get those guys into shape so that they can be effective. And if you cut a couple of weeks off of major league training camp, you will reap what you sow.
Well, there's a reason why pitchers and catchers report a couple of weeks early too, right? I think to your point, those guys do need stretched out. They do need conditioned. I don't know typically what most of them do in the months prior to that. It's almost like their season never stops. They're always training. They're always trying to do something to get themselves stronger. But I'm selfish. I don't like spring training. I get bored with it really, really quick. But that's me. I imagine a lot of fans are sort of feel the same way, where this isn't the most exciting thing to watch. The games are meaningless, but it's all necessary. I don't think I would disagree with that. Anyway, the thought of losing our typical December is stressful. You know what else is stressful is buying a vehicle.
Buying a new car.
Buying a new car, it's always stressful, but it doesn't have to be. Fifth Street Motors, located in Pacific, Missouri, will help you find the vehicle you need no matter what brand. Fifth Street Motors believes in giving you the best price on a pre-owned vehicle that will fit your budget. Give Brandon or Dawn a call today at 573-259-1306 and tell them Gateway City Sports sent you.
Well, if we do get the stoppage, this is going to turn into the Book of Boba podcast.
Ooh.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. We'll have to start
and then we can roll right
again.
into the Lightyear podcast.
What's that?
Oh, man.
You guys been planning some shit behind my back?
And the Hawkeye podcast. That's
that starts next month.
Event. And that actually looked pretty funny. I liked that preview the other day.
You know, I've watched a couple movies recently. Speaking of the whole sci-fi thing, and I know I don't mean to shift us into that now, but we are almost at the hour. I did watch Dune.
Oh, don't talk about it. I'm seeing it tomorrow.
Okay, fine. I'm not going to get into any spoiler material at all. I won't. I'm not familiar with the story. I know that I had seen the original Dune at some point in my past, probably 20 years ago. I didn't understand it then either. I know there's a book that might help. It's one of those where, Pete, for me, and I'm unfamiliar with the story. So for me, I had to go back and watch a little bit of it to kind of like, and sometimes I have to do that with newer material. I have to kind of go through it twice to start getting, figuring out. I tell you what, when you have a non-sci-fi fan in the house and they just tolerate your shit with sci-fi and they sit and try to follow this movie with you, I've never heard so many groans and statements like
the sigh. Saying Sarah wasn't into it.
What in the fuck is this movie about? And it's
oh, well, then you need to sit her down and have her watch Cronenberg's Dune. Because that one is rough.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed the movie. I thought visually it was pretty good. The story takes some thinking. And so if you don't like to think, if you just want to watch a movie like Step Brothers, Dune is not going to be your cup of tea.
Well, apparently Dune Part 2 is been greenlit.
Yeah.
Either it just started shooting or it's shooting soon. Well, the second part will be much more action.
Yeah, so and the way they left this off, it was obvious they're going to continue the tale. So,
well, that was that I read an interview or I read a story about it, and Villeneuve recognized that he couldn't properly tell the story in a single film.
No.
because you'd have to either cut stuff out or you couldn't put it in its proper place if you tried to rush it. And so that's why this first one is so languid and beautiful, but there's a lot of exposition.
Typically that first chapter, right, is one that for some it's rough. I know that the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the first one, many people kind of thought, man, this goddamn movie went on forever, and it moved slower in the beginning, and a lot of those big long stories like that do. Except if you're in J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson's world, then they just like to move fast the entire goddamn time with no continuity and no real story. So
and you just skip over the stuff and you don't ever come back and explain it.
and you have to rely on
leave it for Dave Filoni to fix.
Right. You leave it for that's right. You leave it for Favreau and Filoni to fix it, or you rely on some comic book writers to tell some backstories so shit actually makes sense. So not only are you asking people to watch the movie, but you might want to watch a couple of these series on Disney too. Maybe this extra material. Maybe pick up a comic book or a novel or two, and we'll fill in all the shit that didn't make any sense.
Hey, speaking of Filoni, gents. Did you order your Trapper Wolf Black Series action figures?
No, I saw that. No, I've put those on pause, man. I probably have about 100 of those now on open display. I'm an out of the box guy on those. I don't keep them in. I had to get a new shelf because I ran out of room. And they don't come with stands, which kind of is irritating because I'm telling you, man, it is a fucking set of dominoes. One of those things topples over. I've got like 20 of them that topple over because they're so crammed.
You got to get the little stands that go behind them and go around the waist.
Oh man, those things are like $10 a piece. I'd have to invest $1,000 just to have them all stand up and not worry about them falling over. I just want the peg. I mean, they have holes in the feet for pegs. I just want there to be a practical. And you got to read like everything you read on Amazon or anything. Like they aftermarket people, the guys 3D print that shit out at home and they put them in bags and send them to you. But you got to read like half of them won't fit in certain. I mean, there's so many of those. I'd say targeted to older generation fans, and it's not just limited to Star Wars. You got DC, Marvel. I mean, you even have Ghostbusters 6-inch figures, which I think is actually pretty cool. But why can't just like they do in the world of automotive, or Elliott, we're familiar with the world of powered appliances. There's some industry standards. Why the fuck can't they standardize a hole in the foot of a 6-inch action figure and sell a common stand like that? Let capitalism prevail and everybody compete with their stands and just make the damn hole size the same so it works. That's all we're asking, man. We are not asking to move mountains. I'm not asking you to take me in space for 10 seconds. I'm asking for a peg on a flat plate that fits in an action figure. Why is it so hard to find?
And I tell you, that brings me to a point on which I agree 100% with Jimmy McInerney. Stop justifying your creation of figures for kids, because kids are not buying Star Wars toys anymore. It's us. So start catering your builds toward us. And I absolutely agree with them.
Yeah, I do too.
Hasbro, you need to set up a subscription service.
They have
every month we get a new action figure.
Man. They have wonked this thing all up. Brick and mortar is not even a place to go anymore. I mean,
I don't even look for them there. I'm on Hasbro Pulse and I'm on Dorkside Toys. That's where I look to see the new Black Series characters and to see if there's anything that I want.
I mean, once in a while you can find an eBay seller that's doing something at a reasonable price for one that's hard to find. But generally it's Amazon. Amazon will have that stuff available. And it's usually about what you would have paid at a Target or somewhere else, usually about $20. But yeah, I mean, I agree with that notion too, but it's just, it's sad for me to think that guys, when we used to go into the stores, I mean, Elliott might not remember this. He was wrestling, but in the 80s when Jedi came out, and even in 99 when the Phantom Menace hit, I mean, do you remember walking into a store like a Toys R Us anywhere else, and that stuff was just beautifully displayed? It was everywhere.
It was a whole aisle.
It was a whole experience too. I mean, all of it has been. And when The Force Awakens launched, it was another experience. Now, they didn't have enough inventory, but I mean,
there's a reason they didn't have enough inventory there on. And it's not just The Force Awakens, it's also the prequel trilogy. And I'll take my share of blame for that, because when the Power of the Force line came out, you remember that?
Oh yeah.
I worked at Target at the time. And was
that the line that came out in the mid-90s?
Yeah, it was the ones where everybody looked huge and buff.
That's right. They look like the late 90s and 2000s baseball players.
They did.
Yeah.
But so shocking. I know I worked in electronics and because I was in electronics, my buddies and I who worked there, we had access to the order system and also to the inventory system. So we could tell obviously what was coming in, something that somebody in cosmetics didn't need to know. And ostensibly it was so that we could tell somebody when we were going to be getting more TVs or VCRs or DVD players or whatever.
But instead you were looking for when that
we
shit
would
arrived.
use it to see. We would use it to see what shipments of Star Wars toys were coming in. And when they would get delivered, we would raid the storage area before they ever made it out to the floor.
Yeah.
So Star Wars toys would come out to the floor and half the case was already gone.
Yeah, no, and that stuff was.
I'm looking for a Prince Shizo action figure. Yeah, I don't know. There weren't any in the case. Sorry about that.
No, I was
I
was at the midnight Force Friday at Toys R Us when the Force Awakens released. It was kind of cool. There were people my age there and their wives and it wasn't like a Black Friday where people were like pulling knives out on each other as they walk through the front door at midnight. But Toys R Us was like, they had like 2 of everything and that shit was gone instantly. So I missed out on most of it. I'm like, what was left? I'm like, I was like maybe 12th in line and shit was gone by the time I got there. So
and I tell you what, that's the other thing. And this is something that Jimmy and Jason have criticized Hasbro for, and I've never understood it. And it's been true forever. Why do you not stock the cases evenly? Why do you put 20 Baron Rufio or whatever?
Constable Zuvio.
Baron Zuvio.
Yeah.
Constable Zuvio. Why do you put 20 Constable Zuvio figures in a case and 1 Leia action figure? You know what we're looking for. Just put, if there are 20 action figures in a case and there are 5 figures in a wave, then you put 4 of each of them in there. You don't put 10 Zuvios and then split the other 4 among the remaining 10 figures.
Well, I see, and I don't know that they necessarily do that. Although, if you can,
no, they do.
As you could imagine, though. Well, and so I've been on the manufacturing side for a little bit, but I've never done it. I've had touched some things that are licensed, but generally it was licensing a brand that I had been a part of. So I'd seen it from the other side. But if you talk about that whole process of manufacturing, you imagine working with Lucasfilm or Disney, and they'll only give you source material when they're willing to give it to you. And they'll probably keep that shit under lock and key because they try to keep a lid on most of the content. You know, they want things leaking early. So I imagine, I'm not trying to make an excuse for Hasbro because I think they fucked this whole thing up. I mean, I think they could have executed on all this merchandising for Star Wars so much better than they did. I think they did a terrible job doing it. But it probably didn't help that there's a approval chain that goes back and forth between Lucasfilm and Hasbro when these things are in the process of development, and that stuff doesn't happen instantly. A Hasbro sculptor does not get it right on the first time. It's a back and forth, sending a prototype, getting it approved, and then taking it to the next phase, getting the tooling or molding done, and then finally getting it over here. So I know Disney is also like, the one thing with Jimmy and Jason that they don't bring up enough, and that's Disney, Lucasfilm, whoever it is just as much part of the problem of merchandise just not being available, being limited. And I think what Jimmy was railing on the other day, there's this new line for younger kids, and they don't want the shit. They're not interested in it like we were. Because look, there weren't as many. I'll admit there weren't as many choices for us. It was Star Wars toys and a handful of other things as we worked our way through the 80s. There was He-Man, there was G.I. Joe, Transformers. Those were the big ones, right? And
Ron, let's own our share of responsibility in this. Yeah. The reason they don't want to play with Star Wars toys is because when they go to take them out of their box, we're like, don't touch that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
No. Don't play with that.
Don't you take the lightsaber blade out of that hilt. You can break off the little peg on the end. I mean, it's all, you're out. You're right. Yeah. And if they're putting the wrong guy in the wrong cockpit of the wrong ship, you're all over their ass. So we have not made it easy for this generation. But at the end of the day, the product is not as exciting for the kids in this generation as it was for us. They have a lot more to pick from. And they have electronic devices, Pete, that you and I weren't even imagining. We probably wish that we could have a magic piece of cardboard that would show us any movie, any TV show, anything we ever wanted, and our minds would have been blown. My kids have access to all of that almost whenever they want. They didn't have to wait on Saturday morning to watch what they wanted to, because God damn it, they can watch it whenever they feel like it.
So my neighbor had, and Ellie, I know you're not going to remember this, and Ron, you probably won't. This is probably predates you. So my neighbor had this cardboard stand-up thing from Battlestar Galactica. And
Okay.
It was like 3D, right? And so it had like the readout, the HUD from the fighters, right? And then,
the
and then
Viper.
it bent,
The Colonial
so that
Viper.
it came back, so that like you would sit at the table and it felt like you were in one of the fighters from and I think if I remember right, it had like a joystick or something. It was just cheap cardboard, but man, that was the best thing in the world. Our kids, they put on a
VR
an
headset.
Oculus, and they're actually flying an X-Wing fighter, right? They would look at that. If I set that thing down in front of Liam, he'd look at it and he'd be like, "No,
That's stupid.
I don't even know what you're trying to do."
Yeah, what the hell is this supposed to do? They'd be interested for about 5 seconds until they started trying to do whatever you did 40 years ago and be like, "This is dumb. You guys are all dumb."
Dad. Where's my iPad?
Yeah,
I'm gonna go back to playing Minecraft.
I used to take an Atari that we had in whatever game it was, Space Invaders, whatever it was, and I would build almost like a cardboard cockpit around the little black and white TV I had access to, and that would be my screen. So I would be sitting in some kind of ship pretending that I was flying something. But that was it, man. I mean, it was what a different world. But I guess going back to it, I kind of feel bad for, even my boys that didn't get that kind of excitement to go to the store and see this massive Star Wars shit or whatever it is they're interested in. It's just not there anymore, And so that's a whole experience you can't really share with them. You can maybe show them a documentary like Plastic Galaxy or something to even fathom what that experience might have been like. But it's just crazy these days. They can go to Amazon and see the same shit that you were clamoring for at age 8.
Yeah.
And they can go, "Dad, can you push that button and have that delivered here, free 2-day
Tomorrow.
shipping?" Yeah, it's just like what a different.
I remember
life.
just being in college and going to GameStop for a midnight release of a video game where you would sit there with all these people in line,
And now you
and they
download
would
it.
have. And now I pre-download it, so the next when it releases, it's already there.
Yeah.
Okay, so here you go. We're just the old farts sitting on the front porch now. See, it's in the description, right? It's 3 guys who know just enough to sound like they know what they're talking about, but we're really just idiots. So when I was in high school, I want to say my junior year, I worked at a computer store in downtown Sycamore, and we had computer games and stuff, and that was the stuff that interested me. But we also rented Nintendo games.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Talk about fun, right?
Mhm.
People coming in. You got Zelda in? No, sorry, it's out, right? Because we had 2 copies of Zelda.
Oh, geez.
And they both got rented. Sorry, you're going to have to come back. And like the look of you remember that, having to go to the store and not know whether the movie or the video game that you wanted to take home was going to be there.
Yep.
And then if it wasn't, then you had to walk around the store with and this was before Blockbuster, right? It was just a mom and pop video store.
Yep.
You had to walk around the store with your mom, just hoping that she was going to pick out something that you would want to watch.
Or
because otherwise you were condemned to a night of
or
eating
you go there
popcorn.
you go there the next day when you know stuff's due back, and you wait there hoping somebody's returning it, and then they return it and you see it behind the counter. You're like, "I want to rent that." Well, we got to check it in, and so it's like it's. I strategically, especially when I was a little bit older enough to kind of walk or at least drive to a video store, is I would go there when stuff was due, which is usually like at noon or something, and so you'd go there hoping that somebody had brought it back on time, and that they had before they even put it back where it's displayed, that you could grab it from them. It's like in the library, you see it on the cart being returned. You're just like, shit, I'll just take this off your hands.
Yeah.
You follow around the video store nerd with the big stack of movies, right?
putting it
just
away.
Following him around, hoping that he's going to take your movie out and put it back on the shelf.
Yep.
Or would never ask you what you were looking for.
Yeah.
Right. They would just make you follow them and wait.
I would walk into ours and say, "Can I look at the return section? Can I look at your return box just to see what was in there?"
That's not a bad idea. And many times
because that was always the good stuff.
I forgot about the video game rental. Like you had to rent those cartridges at one point too. Those weren't widely distributed. Even a local Walmart store, which is still not the Walmart it is today, but the earlier ones didn't have like that big robust electronics section. So shit was hard to find, man.
And those games were expensive, man.
Yeah.
They were those video game stores were absolutely relying on turnaround and stuff being returned on time and that's why you had the huge late fees, was because they were paying through the nose to get that.
In a game like Zelda, you're not beating that in a weekend.
No.
Unless you've got the Nintendo Power with the walkthrough, you're not beating that.
You guys ever call that number?
The store that I worked at, we had 3 and 7 day rentals for specifically that reason.
Yeah, you would have had to. Yeah, Zelda was a difficult one. I mean, it's first of its kind, and I remember playing the first time I ever played all the way through Zelda was on a Game Boy when I was on ship, and that took a while, man.
Oh, damn!
Yeah, it was a color Game Boy though, but it had the original Zelda.
You can't call it colored. It was a Game Boy of color.
That's what I'm saying. It was the first one that they did a color display on, and so I had the original one that was for the original Nintendo, and I also had the Super Nintendo. That I think the second, Link's Awakening or something like that. But goddamn, those games were fun. I told you guys I got that hacked Nintendo that had all that stuff on it, and I've still got it.
The emulator,
yeah. It's not an emulator. It's a little mini console. And it has over 500.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so, I mean, Nintendo does sell those. There's only like 30 some games that come with it, like the Super Mario stuff. And the one I bought it on eBay, and I paid a couple $100 for it. But it has everything that I had, everything and more. I'll never play every game on that thing, but
So when you play them, do the boys join you, or do they just look at you like, what the hell?
Oh man, I've tried to. Sam's probably the closest to it. He's likes the teenage. He likes the fighting games on there, which are still pretty fun. I mean, those are still pretty valid. But as far as like Super Mario Brothers or Legend of Zelda, man, they got better shit on the tablet.
Well, Breath of the Wild is pretty great.
I mean, think about
on the Switch.
Think about the graphics that they look at today, and when they see the 8-bit and 16-bit graphics, I mean,
oh yeah,
that's a stretch for those guys. It's like, it'd be like playing baseball, and I throw my son a glove from the 1940s. Like, what the hell is this? How did you even use this? And he looks at me the same way when I'm playing on a Nintendo, like Dr. Mario or something.
And the crazy thing is, they all play Minecraft, which is 16-bit.
I know, it's just shit in this world that makes no sense. Minecraft is one of them to me.
Speaking of making no sense, we don't understand why you've been watching or listening to this show for 75 minutes. So we're going to put you out of your misery.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's been a fun episode. I kind of like it when we don't have anything planned to talk about. We just go.
We haven't planned anything for like 4 years.
No, this is true. Hey, and Ron, you know what? Real quick, can you throw Elliott up in a single shot? Just because we need to get one more glorious shot of that stash before it goes away on Monday. Because
that thing is
just to remind everybody, we will be partaking in Movember. The link will be in the description later, and we'll be putting it out. Hope you guys will be joining us in Movember. Help us to change the face of men's health, and also obviously be tuning in as Ron, Elliott, and I will be posting updates to our facial hair as we go. Obviously, we can't all go in the same venue, so. Ron, I think with the person with the least tenure at his job, I think you're the one who gets to grow the toothbrush mustache.
Ooh. Well. Okay.
Forget about what that German guy did to ruin its reputation. You'll look great.
Oh. Okay. Well, I'll see what I can do. Can't promise
Ron,
anything. Can we leave it on him till we end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, just leave it on him. Elliott, why don't you go ahead and mouth the words? If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your friends to subscribe. We're available on Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. I'm sorry, not on Facebook, on Meta. What was I thinking?
Yeah, there you go.
Also, be sure to check out the other Gateway City Sports Network podcasts, including the Derek King Sports Show, 2 for 3 with Moose Michaels, Yacker Jacks, XFL, STL, and of course, End the Cards with A-Train Arlington Lane. You can send us an email at the show at teamofrivalspodcast.com. You can find Elliott at
TOR_Elliott.
And obviously that's on Twitter. And Ron, you can find at
TOR_Ron75.
And with that, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. This has been a fun week. I can't wait to start growing some facial hair again for the first time in literally years. And I can't wait to see what you two gentlemen come up with. And Elliott, obviously, you have to post your Ted Lasso costume on our Instagram page.
It will be ready. So
if you believe.
I believe.
I believe.
All right, guys.
All right, buddies.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We'll check you all out next week, I think. Same time, same place, unless we're too tired.
Yeah.
Until then, love you all so much. Bye-bye, everyone.